Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and with us this evening is Select Board candidate April Danielson. I'm glad you're with us, April, and thank you for having a name that I can easily pronounce. That's very, very good. April is one of 4 Select Board candidates this year, and just a little bit of a public service announcement and a reminder to our viewers. The Chelmsford election will be held on April 6th, that's next Tuesday. And this year, you also have the option of early voting in person. And if you wish to do that, you can go to the town hall. I believe they start at 9 o'clock in the morning. And you go through the front entrance. It's beautifully marked with signs with very large lettering. You can't possibly make a mistake. You know exactly where to go. And you walk in. They will guide you through the process, and you'll be able to do your early voting prior to April 6th. Or you can vote in person on April 6th. So with that said, April, what we usually do is we ask our guests to give a very brief biographical sketch, your relationship to the town and so forth, so I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. A little bit about me. I was born in Virginia. I moved to Massachusetts in the early 1990s, so I was raised in the South Shore. I grew up in Brockton. I went to school at Southeastern Regional Voc in Easton, Mass. And how I ended up this way is I got a career out here in a human service agency, and I had my first apartment, moved out here, and worked for that agency and just stayed on the North Shore since then. I have a family. I've lived in Chelmsford for 6 years. And I moved here due to a fire that we had in our apartment in Lowell. So how I ended up. That's how I ended up in Chelmsford. So I call Chelmsford my saving grace. It really is a place where I was able to recover. Our family was able to regain our footing, and I love Chelmsford. I love it here. So that's how I ended up here in Chelmsford.
Well, I think that's great, and you certainly evidence an enthusiasm for the town, which I think is probably a large factor when you're seeking public office. I've always said you have to like the town and you have to like people.
I do.
And if you like people, that's the other thing. If you don't like people, you don't belong in politics. That's just my opinion.
Exactly, exactly.
So having said all that, you've been here 6 years now, which is a reasonable amount of time to get to know the town and some of the people and the various groups that you would come into contact with. So why are you seeking the office at this time?
As I stated, I have my family here. My family has motivated me to run. I'm always talking about different incentives and different things that I could see happening in town, and so I wanted to get involved. When I moved here, like I said, we were trying to recover and regain our footing, and now that we have done that, I feel that, okay, it's time for me to roll up my sleeves and get involved in the town and the things that are around me. So I am running for technically Chelmsford future, my children. I want them to be raised here and have a good upbringing here, and so what that takes is the hard work today to be put in regarding different things and issues that come up. So I want to be here for them and have a future here in Chelmsford.
Well, that's great, and again, your enthusiasm comes through when you're speaking. I think that's great. Now you've been through a series of debates. And you've got another one coming up this evening. I believe the high school students are hosting a debate.
Yes.
And I think that may be your toughest grilling. We all know how high school kids can be, and they're pretty sharp and they don't miss much.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And I think the 4 of you may be in for a run for your money. So I'm actually looking forward to watching that.
Same. I'm very excited. They have been star players when it comes to putting this debate together. They have been very communicative. They've been very exciting, and their excitement shows, and it makes me excited. So I'm definitely looking forward to tonight's debate.
That's good. And you've had a number of the questions asked that are standard debate questions, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And some of these are hot buttons in town, as you know, and one of the hot buttons that we traditionally have is the question on a split property tax rate. And we've had that now, I think this is the 3rd year that we've had it. And so I just ask you to give your views on that particular situation.
Sure. My views on the split tax rate, a lot of people, when they heard I was running, those were different issues that were brought up to me. And what my stance on it is right now, that started in December of 2018, the split tax rate. And I feel that we haven't had enough adequate time to see if it really works for Chelmsford. Due to the pandemic happened right directly after. And so I feel that with the split tax rate, we should keep it the way it is currently, and really, now that we're gaining our footing back, pandemic recovery, to see how it truly affects, the businesses and the residents, and if it is something that we want to keep in Chelmsford. However, I do think we should, keep it for now, but look into it further as the years progress. But for now, I feel like we should keep it where it is and focus on bringing in revenue for small businesses, the big corporations on the crossroads of 129. Focus on those things so that the burden of the taxes on the businesses isn't as, as overwhelming for them.
Right, right. And that actually is very consistent with the latest report that was done. We had a tax classification study committee in town just before the split tax rate was implemented. And one of their recommendations was that if changes are going to be made year over year, that they be done in gradual swings so that you're not shocking the ratepayers. So that seems to be your position seems to be very consistent with what the tax classification study report had to say. So that's good. Another hot button issue in town, and has been since I've been in town, which is more years than I care to talk about, is land use, land development, affordable housing, and those kinds of things. So do you have any thoughts in any of those areas?
I definitely do. I feel that that's one of the reasons why I love Chelmsford. I love the open spaces that we have access to as residents. I love the bike trail. I love the lime quarry. I take my children there. It's a great environment to raise children in, so they can just run and be carefree outside. So I do feel that land use here is being used adequately, but we could also look into doing different things and being innovative regarding like the area over there by the center, the Fisk House and Oddsfellows building. I know that the planning board just denied that development going in there, but I feel the town should really look into buying that property and making it an inclusive space for all. So we have, Summer Place around the corner right behind there. The seniors can come and walk over. If we make it a town recreation center for all ages. I know that the town has recently started the Age Friendly Initiative with the service coordinator of the town and different organizations in town. And so that would be something that we should look into, creating an age-friendly space for our residents and having that as a recreation center or a town community center.
And that area, of course, it was very controversial because the proposal was to put, as part of that entire project, was to put up a very large housing complex, which many residents felt did not fit either the character or the dimension of that particular area. So it just shows you what can happen when people become mobilized.
Exactly.
I believe that within 2 or 3 weeks, the folks that were against that particular proposal were able to gather somewhere around 2,500 signatures to stop that. And I think the planning board listened. And I'm not sure that the entire planning board was on board with that to begin with. I think there were some people on the planning board that had their reservations about that. So it's just that's a good example of how local politics can work. But I think your ideas are, I won't say they're revolutionary, but it's something that I haven't heard before, but they're interesting, and I think should be considered. So that's
Thank
good.
You.
Now you said you had children.
I do. Yeah.
Do you have any currently in the public school system?
Prior to COVID, I did. During COVID, I took my children out of the school system. Homeschooling
as did many people.
Yes, right. Yes. But my oldest daughter, she was at the Byam, and my son was at the CHIPS program.
Okay, so you're assuming that we're going to get out of this COVID situation, which I think we will, hopefully shortly. you're invested in the schools.
Definitely.
Yeah.
When my daughter was attending Byam, I was on the BSA and participated. I was newcomer to that as well. My daughter started kindergarten, so it was she was the first child in the school system, and so I was new to assisting the BSA with different events that they would have at the Byam school. And I was just getting started in that when COVID hit.
Right.
But it was a great experience, and I got to know people in town. And I recommend if any parents are unsure of joining their local PTO, definitely do so, because you learn a lot about the schools and how they operate, and it's a great environment to be a part of.
Well, it's also a good social thing. I know
Yes.
that, now my wife was a teacher in the Chelmsford school system
Okay.
for about 40 years. And so when we were first married and moved to Chelmsford, I didn't know anybody in town, but she knew a lot of people. But what I found is when we had children, and I got more involved in the schools, that's
Yes.
when I developed a lot of acquaintances and friendship that I probably otherwise would not have done if I had not had children in the school system. So
Exactly.
that's the other plus. So do you have what's your general feeling on the level of support that we have for our school system? Do you think it's adequate? Should it be more? And then you can probably talk a little bit about the state aid situation in your response, if you'd like to.
I definitely feel that we do have a great school system here in Chelmsford. I think that's known across Massachusetts, because when I stated I lived in Chelmsford, oh, that's a great school system. That's the first thing that people said to me. And so I was very proud of that. And so I think that John Moses on school committee and Donna Newcomb, who is great to work with, is doing an adequate and great job with our school systems and things that need to be addressed. So I feel that I trust them as far as school committees in making the accurate decisions regarding our children, as well as the teachers. I have had great experiences at the Byam School. I can only speak for the Byam and the CHIPS program. They have been very involved in my children's lives and making sure that they have what they need to adequately get educated. So I feel that they do a great job here in Chelmsford.
So you've had experience with the CHIPS as
Yes,
well.
yes.
And my grandchildren have all gone through CHIPS. And
I love it. Even during the pandemic, you know, for them to embrace the online remote schooling full-heartedly, as if the kids were right in the classroom with them, was phenomenal to see. They didn't miss a beat. The teachers stepped up their game and just did an adequate and admirable job, because I don't know if I could do that or not.
It's unbelievable to me what the entire school system did, and I'm sure it went very well in other communities as well, but
Right.
of course we only had visibility to what was happening in Chelmsford. And I'm in awe of what the teaching staff and the administrative staff at the schools were able to do. And it's funny you talk about we all say, well, we understand having the academic classes online, but to try to do something with the CHIPS.
Yes, and engage the children and keep them engaged.
It was just phenomenal, and one of my grandchildren at the time was just doing her last year in CHIPS, and they were coming to our house, and because my daughter and son-in-law work, so they were coming to our house, and we was kind of supervising that whole situation. And I said, well, what are we going to do with Violet, who was the one in CHIPS? And my wife said, well, oh no, she has to get on the computer.
She has to get online too.
And
Yep.
I said, well, this ought to be interesting. And so I was just completely flabbergasted with what they were doing. And then I thought, well, okay, I understand the academics, and I guess I understand, some of the things that they're doing in CHIPS, because it's all like pre-K stuff, and it's geared academically, But whenever they tried to do a gym class online, I said, "Now
that was creative and
I
innovative."
have to see."
Yes.
And they carried it off.
Yep.
It was just amazing. Well, I didn't mean to
No, that was
deviate
great,
from the
but
conversation, but I just
very true.
You brought that up, and I think that's important, and that must have been quite a thing for you. You have 3 children.
Yes.
And you pulled them all out of the school system.
Yes.
And you are effectively homeschooling them with the support of, the Chelmsford system and the media and so forth. And you're sitting here smiling about it. So that
we made it through, and we're still making it through.
But so now the kids are scheduled to go back I guess next week, I don't know. So that may take a little pressure off of people. But
Right.
As somebody who did it with 3 children, what do you have to say about that whole experience?
I will say it was difficult in the beginning, just
Yeah.
like everything is a learning curve. But once we got into a rhythm and like the teachers were very helpful. Well, I'll speak for my own perspective. At the Bynum School, the teachers were very communicative regarding, okay, this is what's happening next. How's your daughter doing with this? Is there? I know that your daughter might like this particular book. Why don't we look into that? And they kept communication open between the children. Even one teacher sent a card, and then one teacher got the whole class email address, and they emailed back and forth with each other, so they would keep communication open. So I think it was just a great idea, and it shows that they really care about my child as an individual.
Do you feel that, obviously the kids lose something because of the lack of socialization and so forth, but how do you feel about the academic side of things? Do you think that they kept up reasonably well enough so that it makes sense that the kids now move on to the next year? Do you feel that there have been any significant gaps in that?
I don't think there's been any significant gaps. I feel like the teachers have adequately kept up with, their curriculums and the schooling. If anything, as far as socialization, the kids do interact. They have their social
Yes.
time on the computers
Yes.
and things of that nature. So, and I have 3 children, so they all interact with each other. So I don't feel that they missed out on anything as far as that goes. But
Well, that's good. So, folks, you now have an official report card from somebody who's gone through that process. 3 children.
just 2 in the school system.
2 in the school system, but still, it is, and many folks that are watching the show can probably relate to the things that you've said. Very, very interesting. So, April, let's move on a little bit. Assume you get elected. Okay, you're now a select board member, and there are, as we all know, in any town, there are always hot button issues. So, what do you see as the most pressing issue, or 2 or 3,
Right.
facing the town at this point? And do you, whatever you envision there, could you just expand on that a little bit and give us some thoughts as to how you might address some of that?
Sure. I feel that the pressing issues at the time currently would be the pandemic recovery. And when I say pandemic recovery, I mean in every sense of the word. So as far as businesses getting back up and running to their standards of how they ran before, bringing in small business to Chelmsford would be a great push as well. Public safety. Our first responders, our firefighters, our police department, and making sure they're adequately staffed and have all the resources they need, because they've been doing it the whole time. People tend to forget that they've been, yes, we're in a pandemic, but they've still had to go in, and do their job. So I feel that we need to look at what's best, for our public safety workers. Quality of life, basic quality of life is an issue. People are, you wouldn't think from the outside of Chelmsford appearances, but people have been suffering from food insecurity, and that's a big issue. I've met with the Food Advisory Council of Chelmsford and had different conversations regarding food insecurity. And if elected and if not elected, one of my initiatives that I've started to work on is called the Chelmsford Community Fridge. And the Chelmsford Community Fridge, along with other fridges that have taken place as a mutual aid initiative in Massachusetts. They're popping up all over Massachusetts. When we start one, we will be the 13th in Massachusetts. And what it is for anyone who wants to come to the community fridge, who may not have all they need on their table currently, can have free access to free food. And so that's an initiative that I was very close and dear to my heart that I am starting, and I'm so proud of that. And it's starting right here in Chelmsford to help the need here first, and then my plan would be to branch out into the Merrimack.
So, as you've indicated, you're going to go forward with that regardless of the
Regardless
results of the
of elected or
election.
not, correct,
But
yes.
if you are elected to the board, then it'd be tremendous to have a select person as the main sponsor and driver of that initiative.
Exactly.
I think it would get more traction. So, would you coordinate in any way with the current food?
Correct. So
bank?
in meeting with the food advisory boards, there were different people from the different already food insecure programs. So I shared that incentive with them, and they seem to think it's a great idea. We're going to meet again in May and talk about more progress going forward. I've also met with the town service coordinator, Jen Melanson, who has the Good Gardens for Good currently at the town hall. So we're going to have some fresh vegetables from her gardens. They just got, I believe it was 6 beds, garden beds last year. They now have doubled. So they're going to have double the fruits and vegetables that people can grab at our community fridges. I'm looking to partner with any local businesses that would like to host a fridge on their property, and all you do is you host the fridge. We make sure that we pay the electricity bill for the fridge, and everything else is run by monetary donations for the community fridge. So I'm really excited about that and getting that initiative going. As well as another issue would be accessibility around town for people that may have disabilities or mobility issues. I would like to see, more access to, the open spaces that we have. Due to that, we're still in a pandemic and we still have to social distance. What else can we do in town innovatively that gets people out in the community and fresh air? And I feel like we have all these beautiful open spaces like Sunny Meadows Farm, and I believe we just acquired what is it called, Wooten Farms, I believe.
Yes, Wooten, right.
And they're working on those things and really having access to the outside, because we have been isolated from one another, and we still have to be kind of cautious of COVID and precautions. Even though people are getting vaccinated, we still have people that want to have access to the community that don't technically have it because they don't have the resources they need. So that's also a pressing issue for me. And mental health awareness as well. That's part of the pandemic issues. And I know that just from doing my research as a select board candidate and different things, I've seen different programs and people have brought things to my attention that the Chelmsford Police are working with social workers. So now that social workers could be on a call versus just the police. So I feel that those things are pressing issues that we need to address.
And you've already made inroads with some of the town personnel. You mentioned Jen Melanson, who was and I can never remember her title, but
Chelmsford Service Coordinator.
Service Coordinator. See, I'm very old-fashioned.
I used to be a service coordinator for the state.
In my day, they were called social workers, but I think the function it goes beyond that today. So that's good that you've already tapped into that. So the relationships are important.
Exactly.
So the other thing that the board has done, the current select board actually, they've established a kind of a mission statement, I guess, for lack of a better term, and it was done under the initiative of vision and values. And I think a select person, Timmons, was the one who got that started. And they've developed what looks to me like sort of like a traditional mission statement for the town. We've never had that before.
Oh, okay.
So what are your feelings on that, and how, and again, it's in the initial stages. How do you think that should be rolled out into the community and into the various operating departments in the town? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I've seen the mission statement, and I feel that the wording is very inclusive, and I feel that Chelmsford is very inclusive. I felt very welcome here. I know other people have felt welcome here just from my connections. So I feel that should roll into other parts of the departments and really be the guidelines to how we operate here in Chelmsford. The mission statement also talks about diversity, inclusion, and I've always advocated for diversity. I've always advocated for inclusion. I was a social worker. No, I was a service coordinator for the state.
That's a much better term.
Yes.
I like that because I think it's more descriptive of what happens.
And we have to really advocate for those things. And
Right.
I think Chelmsford is doing a great job in doing so. And by select member Tim's putting that, making that initiative and taking those steps forward to do so has been a great thing for the town of Chelmsford.
Yes, and it's a good example. And as I say, I think that was her initiative, and it's a good example of what happens when you get new people into the process. Now,
Yes.
I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about a potential colleague of yours, but I'll use her as an example because it's a good one. She came into politics in town, and as far as I know, I don't think she had ever really been involved. But she came in and she got a seat on the board, and right away she took on that initiative, which I think is very important. And people may not see the benefit when you first start talking about it, but once you get into the process of actually sitting down and having to think about what it is we're doing and where are we going, okay, then it becomes very important. I was a convert. We did this in the private sector, and you know, I'm old school, and when this stuff came up, okay, that's, but you know, once I got into it as a manager, I really started to embrace it because it is very important. And I'm very, very glad to see that initiative. I'm glad to hear that you are supportive of it, and you seem to understand the reasoning behind going through that kind of a process. So I think that's all good. Now, one of the, we have about 4 minutes left, and I want to leave enough time for you to talk to the voter and ask for the vote. But one last question. You do know that there is a current issue with the town manager and his employment status. His current agreement runs out in June 30th of this year. So do you have any thoughts on how that situation ought to be addressed?
Sure. I stated in the past debates that, you know, I don't know Paul Cohen personally. I've never worked with him, but if elected, I would like the opportunity to do so, to make an informed decision regarding working with him for myself. I've had different people say, oh, what do you think about the town manager? What do you think about him? And I don't know him personally, like I said, but I don't see any wrongdoing that he did do. And I would be willing to sit down and talk with him and discuss, you know, my biggest thing is communication. I pride myself on being communicative and effective communicating, because you can communicate, but you have to be effective in your communicating. And so we'll get to the root of the issue regarding what is the communication problem, because there's a breakdown somewhere. And I'm a team player. I love to collaborate. I love to be innovative. And so I feel if he possesses these things, which I think he does, that we should really take the issue that happened. I don't know what the issue is per se, but we should take a step back from that. And is he adequately doing his job or not? And really question those things. But I don't see any wrongdoing, and I would want to work with him in the future if elected.
And you seem to be, again, you seem to be a very proactive person and somebody who's interested in addressing issues as they come up. So in a relationship like that, if something did come up that bothered you, you would, my perception, just from talking to you now for about 25 minutes, my perception is that you wouldn't waste any time getting into the man's office and saying, listen, I think we have an issue, let's talk about it. And I think the voters in Chelmsford have a right to expect that from their select board members. So I think I think that's a very good posture to take. So April, I'm going to give you, we have a little more than 2 minutes left in the show, and if there's anything else quickly you want to say, but I want to make sure you do have enough time to maybe refocus folks on your background and then perhaps ask for the vote. So this is your opportunity to look into the camera and, as they say, give it your best electioneering shot.
Sure. Hi, my name is April Danielson, and I am running for Select Board. I would appreciate one of your votes on April 6th for Select Board member. I bring my advocacy skills, my openness, my open-mindedness, my innovativeness to the town of Chelmsford, and I hope to be the listening ear to the constituents as you elect me, hopefully, on April 6th. So please vote April in April. Thank you so much.
Vote April in April. I like that. And we'll also remind the voters that in this particular election for Select Board, it's a two-seat election. So we have 4 people running for the office, and 2 people will be elected. So every voter gets 2 votes. So you want their first vote, and you also want their second vote.
Exactly.
If they have another candidate that they might want to support primarily. So that's how that works. So I encourage folks to exercise their vote in that manner. We have what I consider to be 4 qualified candidates running for this position. And I've spoken with all of them now, and I have confidence that regardless of who is elected, I think the town will benefit from any of the folks in office. So please take the time to vote. As I said before at the beginning of the show, if you can't make the April 6th date, you can go to the town hall starting at 9 o'clock in the morning through the election day, and you can vote with that early voting process.
Yes.
Very important. So April, I want to thank you very much,
Thank you so much.
for being on the show and getting your message out to the voters, and good luck on April 6th.
Thank you so much, Sam.
You're welcome.